This week, I'm going to show you how I created these ACEOs to sell in my booth from the masterboard I created on Monday. And even though I didn't love that masterboard and struggled with it, I like the way these turned out. Hi, I'm Christine, the artist behind Darlissa Designs, and I'm happy you're here. Welcome. Today I'm going to start off with the cards that I cut from the masterboard, and I usually do sets of 15. I had plenty for 15, and then I had some extra pieces left over for tags and bookmarks. I'm mixing up some new Mod Podge. This is matte Mod Podge, and I just add a little bit of water. I just think with a little bit of water, it goes on a little more smoothly and evenly. That's just my preference. You don't have to do that. But then I lay them out and gather stickers and pieces that I've stamped for other projects. Tissue paper. I'm going to use a little bit more of the mushroom paper that I used to create the background on the masterboard because I want to place some of those mushrooms from the tissue paper on the cards now that I see how they're cut. And you can see I'm jumping a little bit here because of my storage issues on my phone. But you get the idea. You're just going to take extra pieces now, and instead of one large masterboard, you're creating 15 little pieces of mini art. So if you watched this past Monday's Masterboard Monday video, you'll know that for the second time since I started recording these masterboards, I was not thrilled with the way it came out. But this is a good example to show you that it really doesn't matter because these are backgrounds. Really what you're doing when you create the masterboard is to just get colors and textures and patterns and interesting things in the backgrounds of these cards that are almost impossible to do if you're creating these cards individually. So creating the masterboard, you have no idea how these things are going to land on the cards once they're cut. And then when you do cut them, you have a good place to start and treat them as individual pieces instead of the whole. Another good benefit to creating the masterboard before you cut these into individual pieces is that it makes the set in the end look more cohesive. Although you're going to get, like you can see in some of these cards, there's more red and some there's more gold. But for most of them, there's a little bit of everything. And when you do have one that kind of doesn't go with the rest of the set, you can always go back and add the red or the gold or whatever it is that you're missing. Some of them have the stems with the leaves on them and some of them don't. So if I feel like one individual card is missing something that keeps it separate from the rest of the set, you can always go back in and add it later. One of my favorite tricks is using the water on the paintbrush to trace around what I'm going to tear out. I did not know this for the longest time, and most of you probably already know this trick, but I'm sharing it anyway because for the longest time I tried to cut or use an X-Acto knife to take images out of tissue paper and paper napkins, and it doesn't go well. And also when you tear tissue paper and napkins as well, it blends in better than if you have a straight cut. So you probably already knew that, but for those of you who didn't, there you go. Before we get to the next layer of these cards, I just want to mention that, speaking of mushrooms, I love mushrooms, and I am always trying to figure out a way to get them into my diet. And there are so many things that I would love to share here on this channel, like how I focus and create art even with all the chaos that goes on in my house. But I don't want to just put a lot of random links in the descriptions. So yesterday I decided to wake up my personal YouTube channel, and I did post about some mushroom coffee that I've discovered that I love, and decided that my personal channel is a good place to put all the links that don't apply to anything art, even though actually mushroom coffee and focus indirectly relates to my art, but you know what I mean? I just want a place where I can share everything outside the studio. So if you're interested in finding out more of how I live outside the studio and what life is like as an artist in Florida, you can follow me under my name on YouTube at Christine Rooks. So I'll put the link in the description below and keep this channel focused on art and the process. Now that I've gone back and added mushrooms to each of the cards individually, some on top of mushrooms that were showing through from the background, I wanted to go back and add some line work in gold. There's some shimmery gold from the paint that I used in the background, but I thought it would be cool to add more with my chrome pens. And you just go through and play. This is a good activity for in front of the television at night. I just go in and highlight some lines or add marks, dots. Sometimes I do stitching around the edge. As you can see, I'll go in and highlight some areas on whatever the focal point is. And sometimes you're gonna think that you messed up a card. I do it all the time. And you can just go back and glue a new piece over it. Just a little tip for when you do things with the pen that don't turn out well. Just do another layer on top. Some of you that have been here for a little while may have already noticed that I have a terrible habit of overworking things. And yeah, I think a lot of us have to work really hard at learning to find the stopping point. I've not mastered that yet. I'll speed this up a bit so that you can still see what I'm doing, but it doesn't take an hour to get there. But you can see you just trim up the cards and add the line work. And if along the way you decide to add another layer, you can. I've had cards that did not turn out the way I wanted them to at all. And instead of going back to the beginning, I've just added some gesso over the areas that I didn't like, and then added some more layers and line work on top of those areas that I covered up. That's one of the things I love about art. I've had different types of jobs. I've owned businesses. I've worked in offices. I had a salon and worked in salons. And yeah, I'm always afraid that I'm going to make a mistake or, I'm going to make somebody unhappy. And the cool thing about art is you can make mistakes all day long and there's ways to fix them. And somehow in the end, the more mistakes, the more you fix, the more layers you add, sometimes it works out well for you and turns into a better situation. And you also learn so much from the mistakes that you've made and the ways that you have to figure out how to fix it without throwing the entire project in the garbage just because it's not turning out the way you had envisioned it. For me, and I think for a lot of people I know for a lot of people that I talk to, they ask me how I do certain projects, and a common response is, oh, I could never do that, or I tried to do creative pieces before and I'm just not creative. I think one thing that you have to understand to create something is there's always going to be an ugly stage, as you can see with my Masterboard Mondays. And just an FYI, I promise, most of them don't go the way the first two that you're seeing go. I sometimes have long periods of time where things don't go well and you just keep going because eventually you'll come up with something that you love. And sometimes I'll go for a while where everything I do is a hit and works out well. But if you stop every time something doesn't go well, you're gonna eventually give up and think, well, I'm not creative, so what's the point? I'm here to tell you that you are creative. A lot of people say it's talent, and while talent might be a thing, I really believe that most creativity comes from trial and error and persistence. And a little bit every day makes a huge difference over time. So even if you pick up a pen and grab a piece of paper and it turns into scribble that you're not happy with, keep going. Look at other artists. Try different types of art. It doesn't matter. Just do something. And even if you're not interested in becoming an artist, it's a great way to just focus on something else for a while and get away from everything that you have to deal with in the world. It's just such a calming, reflective process. So you don't need to be an artist. You don't need to be instantly talented. You don't need to have artists in your family and your past. You can just create for you. You don't have to show it to anyone. But if you get in the habit of doing something creative every day, or at least a few times a week, guaranteed you're going to find something that you really enjoy doing. And the more you do it, the better you'll get. So you never know where it's going to take you. For me, I'd like to spend the second half of my life creating and honing my skills and create a career in my retirement age. And this is something I can take with me on the road and go anywhere and do. We have a few years left of Bob working before he can retire, but I'm so looking forward to the time where we're traveling and exploring, and I can continue to share what I've learned on YouTube with all of you and just be at peace and create and have fun and enjoy nature. And that's my plan. In Monday's Masterboard Monday video, as I was creating the background for these cards, I mentioned that I had heard someone talking about ACEOs, and I had no idea what that was. So, of course, I had to do a little digging, and I found out that ACEOs are Artist Card Edition or Originals. They are exactly the same thing as an ATC or Artist Trading Card. Artist Trading Cards are 3.5 by 2.5 cards. They're the same size as a playing deck, which I use sometimes as the base of my cards. But ACEOs, the same thing. They are meant to be sold, and artist trading cards are, like it says, they're meant to be traded. So I have a bunch of friends that are artists, and we trade our cards. So I'll create a set of these, and someone else creates a set, and we pick the ones we want. Sometimes just send them randomly, or you can pick the one that you want out of their set, and we drop them in the mail and trade with each other. I have a binder that I collect them in, and it's so fun to go back and look at all my friends' creations. If you do this too, let me know if you do the same thing. I sometimes really like a set that I create, and I'll keep one or two of my favorite ones so I can go back and look at them later. In another set that I created, also using mushrooms, I used the Mod Podge Dimensional Magic to do the caps of the mushrooms, and I loved the way it came out. I just wished that I had done the stems as well. So on these, I decided to do the same thing and also do the stems. I did not do underneath the cap, so some areas, it's just the top part of the cap and the stem. And as you can see, I used a lighter to kind of heat it up a little bit and bring the bubbles to the top. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it doesn't work. I also use a pen, or if you've got an old blade on your X-Acto knife, that works too, to get the bubbles out, and so it's nice and smooth. Sometimes on my ocean themed stuff, I'll intentionally put bubbles in it because it looks really cool, but in this case I did not want the bubbles, so that's how you fix that. I also learned that after it dries, if you want to flatten out your cards, because you can see some of these are curled, the best way to do that is to wait until it's completely cured and then stack them up and put something on top of them because I try to roll them back in the opposite direction to straighten them out, and I cracked one of the caps of a mushroom with the dimensional magic on it. So you want to be careful once the stuff is on here and dried. You don't want to bend them too much. The stuff stays pretty much where you put it, so I didn't have a problem getting it to the edges. But if you do put this on something that you want to cover all the way to the edge, you can see at some point here I'm using a little stick with a point on it, and you just kind of push it around to the edge where you want it. It's very, very easy to work with. The next thing I'd really like to try out, and I've done it a couple of times at other people's houses when we're crafting and trying out each other's supplies, but I don't have a set in my art room yet. Embossing powders. I love this raised area that this dimensional magic gives you, but it only comes, at least as far as I know, it only comes in a couple different types of product. This one is clear, and the other one I have has a sepia tone to it, which is great when you're doing vintage projects. But I want to do all the colors, and I want to do stamping with raised letters and use them a lot in my handmade cards. I've hesitated going to get it because I know I'm going to get crazy with it and get all the things. And I don't have the space, the time, or the money for that yet. But you never know when the bug will bite, and I will come on and experiment and have all the stuff. So if you love embossing, let us know. If you have a YouTube channel and you've done videos where you've used embossing powders, share with us, because I have not really gone deep into that rabbit hole yet. But I'm super excited to get some dimensional cards and things going. So that'll be a future project here on this channel. As I'm finishing these up, I'm wondering how I can complete them. Sometimes I do some fake stitching with a pen around the edge, but I really like some of the details, and they go all the way to the edges, and I already have lines going through here. So I decided not to do the stitching on these cards, and in some cases I've gone in with real stitching. You can put these through the sewing machine and they look really cool. However, I've never done that with dimensional paint on there, so caution. I don't know if that's going to be great for the sewing machine, but I decided that little quotes would be great. So I created a list of little quotes that I can cut up, printed them out, and I just printed them all within a 2.5 by 3.5 space so that they would fit on these cards. And I just go ahead and cut them up, trim the edges, and I will lay them out on each card to see which quote goes best with which card. Quick tip for future projects. If you noticed, or you can go back and look, the sheet that I printed these quotes out on, because it's such a small space, because these cards are so small, I create a collage and I copy and have each section of the collage the same. And so I got 8 cards of quotes out of one sheet of cardstock. And I just picked a color that I thought would look nice on top of these and printed it on a yellow cardstock. But the reason why I do that is because I put them in my collage containers in the wording text quote box of my containers that I keep pre-cut and saved for later pieces. That was a mouthful. Wow. I go ahead and copy the quotes so that I don't have to go back and find them again for other projects, and I can reuse them later. So that's always fun to go back into that container and see what I've used in the past and what's there for me to get inspiration and cut up and use again. Although I do keep these quote sheets in a separate file on my computer, so I can go back and pull them up and print them on a different color of cardstock later. And if the quote is too long, you can cut a few words and stack them. You'll see that in some of these cards. And here is the final result. 15 little original pieces of artwork that I will put in a protective sleeve, same size as the baseball card protector. So if you're creating these and they're 2.5 by 3.5, you can just go on Amazon, and I will put the link in the description below. That will take you directly to the ones that I ordered. And they fit perfectly and they protect. I usually seal all my final pieces, but if you're going to put them in protective covers, you don't really have to. But you can see the masterboard that was a hot mess when we started turned into these beautiful little original pieces of art. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I will be back on Monday for another masterboard and Tuesday for another Tuesday tip. I hope you all have a wonderful, creative weekend. Thanks for watching.